The Supreme Court's recent decision to handle a case challenging the Justice Department's prosecution of the January 6 riots has already delayed the trials of several rioters and could affect hundreds of other cases, including those of Donald Trump. If the challenge is successful, the Supreme Court could throw out 2 of 4 charges brought against the former president by special counsel Jack Smith in his federal election interference case, and overturn the criminal convictions of dozens of January 6 rioters. Since the Supreme Court decided last month to take up Fisher in the U.S. case, more than a dozen of the defendants from January 6 have already asked judges to halt future trials and trials. While some judges refused, others agreed to defer to the rioters in some cases. Last week, a rioter who had already been sentenced to prison successfully won early release, which was set for May. That rioter, Alexander Shepard, is serving only 6 months of his 19-month sentence. Depending on the Supreme Court's decision, he can go free after that or have to go back to prison to finish his sentence. Another rioter, Kevin Seafried, the Delaware plasterer who famously carried the Confederate flag into the Capitol, advocates for a similar early release. Some others are eligible for deferred sentences, meaning they will not be sentenced or have to go to prison until the Supreme Court makes a decision on the case, which could not happen until the end of June. Challenge to the sentencing strategy of the DOJ. The case, brought by Joseph Fisher, a former police patrolman from central Pennsylvania, who was convicted of preventing the raising of a Capitol Police line, fundamentally affects how the DOJ judged hundreds against the riots of the 6th of January. In those cases, the DOJ successfully argued that they committed a crime, preventing federal prosecution. Fisher raised the question of whether the law could be applied to congressional proceedings, such as the 2020 elections, which were suspended on January 6, 2021. This is the same law that Smith used to impeach Trump for 2 points of interference in federal elections. The former president's lawyers plan to challenge the statute of limitations if it goes before a judge to hear the case again under Supreme Court rules. A source told CNN Trump's case is currently on hold while an appeals court hears the issue of criminal immunity surrounding the presidency. It is currently the law in D.C. federal court that 2 of Trump's 4 charges, conspiracy to obstruct official proceedings and obstruction. However, if the Supreme Court were to limit or disagree with the Justice Department, it could affect the trial of Trump, which is already fixed. In March, the person said, Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is overseeing the case, is unlikely to delay the trial if the case comes back to her before the Supreme Court rules on Fisher. If Trump's trial comes before the Supreme Court's decision and changes the DOJ's ability to use the law, it could lead to Trump being tried again, the source said. The special counsel's office has already argued that obstruction of justice claims should not affect Trump, because his alleged crimes included falsifying voting certificates and sending them to Congress, according to an earlier filing. Rioters seek relief. Several lawyers representing the January 6 rioters are deciding whether to seek relief in D.C. District Court, while some have already tried to halt future judgments or convictions, according to people familiar with their strategies. This includes both attorneys working for the federal public defender and private attorneys. These cases can be reversed, said Kira West, a lawyer for the January 6 riots. It was a happy day for me when it happened. I believe the court will consider withdrawing the case. One of West's clients, Alex Harkrider, tried to stop the lawsuit in early January because of a Supreme Court action. A Trump supporter who traveled from Texas to the January 6 rally in Washington, D.C., Harkrider argued that his case was directly affected because he said his primary offense was obstruction. But Judge Royce Lamberth held Harkrider's trial without a jury on the first working day of the year. A judge found Harkrider guilty of strangulation and other serious charges, including carrying a tomahawk into the Capitol while the vice president was there. The Supreme Court's outcome is likely to have the greatest impact on riot defendants whose sole motive is obstruction of justice. that is, those who were not violent during the riot.